So next we have a talk on diabetes care for eye patients by Dr. Velayudham Pillai. Uh, Sir is director of Sri Balaji Diabetic Center. He's been working with KMC and at a government hospital, passed out from MMC 1975. He's a faculty in PHFI. He's delivered lectures and talks to various physicians and to many doctors throughout the world. He's the chief diabetologist at Kamakshi Memorial Hospital. Sir, the floor is yours.
First of all, let me thank the Madras chapter of Ophthalmologists Association for inviting a non-ophthalmologist to give a talk in a ophthalmologic meeting. Thanks for the introduction. Okay, I am going to talk about the diabetic retinopathy. This presentation is aimed for people who are treating diabetic patients. You all know that diabetic retinopathy is a highly specific vascular complication of both type 1 and type 2 diabetes, with prevalence strongly related to the duration of diabetes and the level of glycemic control. Why this diabetic retinopathy becomes so important? Because it is the most frequent cause of new cases of blindness among adults aged 20 to 74 years. So it becomes our duty to prevent this blindness from diabetes happening in people in the age group of 20 to 74 years. So my talk is how to do that in today's scenario. So as treating diabetic patients, what is our role in order to eliminate or prevent the diabetic retinopathy? I feel we have 4 roles or 4 aims in order to clean the diabetic retinopathy, in order to prevent the progression, in order to prevent the blindness in the diabetic patients population. The first is prevent the occurrence or onset, prevent the progression, the prompt referral, and provide regular follow-up. Can we really prevent the occurrence or onset of diabetic retinopathy? I think we can do that if we control all the risk factors of diabetic retinopathy. There are 4 major risk factors in diabetic retinopathy. One is the glycemic control, nephropathy, uncontrolled hypertension, and dyslipidemia. The glycemic control plays a major role in preventing the diabetic retinopathy. This shows clearly that many large prospective randomized studies have shown that we can prevent or delay the onset or progression of the diabetic retinopathy by potentially improving the glycemia and keeping the blood sugar near normal glycemic rate. The longer the patient is having good glycemic control, lesser is the chance of developing retinopathy. So you have to keep the patient in normal glycemic state for as long as possible. This is a very famous slide in the diabetic group. Okay, this is from the ADA, which says that you can aim for a very stringent control of diabetes, that is a A1C level less than 7%, depending upon the patient's disease duration, life expectancy, importance of comorbid conditions, and whether the patient is prone for hypoglycemia or not. Younger the patients, you should target for a lesser and lesser HbA1c. If it is less than 6.5, it is more and better. It can prevent the onset of diabetic retinopathy. How to keep the blood sugar under good control? The problem in our country, as far as we are concerned, the diabetologists are concerned, is the follow-ups are not very proper. Patients don't come for the date, whatever we say. So what we should do is, to overcome this problem, we should use the latest technologies where we can communicate with the patient without the patient being present physically in the clinic. There are so many messaging apps are available, so many other technical things are available which can be used to in the patient's advantage. All you have to tell the patient is to check the blood sugar and send the report to you. Once the report is ready, you can see the report and the medicines already prescribed, and either you can increase, decrease, or change the medicines to keep the blood sugar under control. Otherwise, patient come to the clinic once in a year, once in 2 years. So we lose the follow, we lose the important time period to keep the patient's blood sugar under control. Other thing is prescribing the appropriate OHA and combinations. So now there are a lot of OHAs are available in the market. So you have to choose the correct OHA depending upon the patient's underlying pathology, and combinations you should use to control the blood sugar. The third thing is, if insulin is indicated, start insulin early if it is indicated. There is a lot of hesitancy in the diabetologists as well as in the physicians to start insulin, because patients say all possible excuses to avoid insulin. No? I mean, I have had the experience of a lot of people telling why they don't want the insulin. Okay, normally, if the lady has come all alone, she will say, I will ask my husband and start the insulin. If both the husband and wife has come for the consultation, they will say, I will ask my daughter or daughter-in-law or son-in-law and start the insulin. So one of the things I heard was really interesting. One lady told me that, sir, I am very busy now. I don't have time to take insulin. So as soon as my daughter completes the 12th examination, I will definitely come to you and start taking insulin. I was very glad. I asked her, which standard your daughter is studying? 4th standard, sir. So people will find all the excuses to start insulin, but somehow you have to convince them and tell them that insulin is important for them to prevent the complications of diabetes. And another point we have to take into account is the affordability of the patient to be taken into account. Because sometimes we have seen prescriptions which the drugs costing more than the patient's monthly salary. So nobody can afford it. So you have to ask about the patient's affordability and use that drugs. That is why in the latest guidelines, if you see, there is a separate category, cost, if cost is the factor. So they say if cost is a factor, you have to use certain drugs only so that the patient's compliance with treatment will be very good. So there are so many drugs are available. You can choose the drugs according to the patient's need, and you can control the glycemia. Once you keep the patient in normoglycemia for a very long time, I am very sure we can prevent the onset of diabetic retinopathy. The second risk factor we have is the nephropathy. Nephropathy, the underlying pathophysiology in nephropathy and the diabetic retinopathy are the same. Reduced endothelium dependent retinal or microvascular dilatation. So in retina, it produces all the changes leading to diabetic retinopathy. In the kidney, it leads to albuminuria. So what we are interested is, the nephropathy is a syndrome characterized by presence of pathological quantities of urine albumin excretion. When you say pathological quantities, up to 30 milligram is normal, 30 to 300 milligram, they call it as microalbuminuria. Above 300 milligram, they say it is macroalbuminuria, it is albuminuria. What we are interested is the stage of microalbuminuria to prevent the diabetic retinopathy. Diabetic nephropathy starts with microalbuminuria and ends in ESRD. But if we start screening the patient for microalbuminuria, that is advised by the ADA, and most of the people are doing it, once the patient tests positive for microalbuminuria, you have to start them on ACE inhibitors as per the guidelines. Not only that, we should remember that these patients are more prone for diabetic retinopathy, and you have to do the periodical retinal examinations. The third risk factor we have is the hypertension and uncontrolled hypertension. The UKPDS study clearly showed that at the end of 6 years, those people who have a raised systolic blood pressure was significantly has more diabetic retinopathy. That means there is the association between hypertension and diabetic retinopathy, not hypertensive retinopathy. So you all know that hypertension is defined as a blood pressure of more than 140/90 millimeters of mercury. What is important is numerous studies have shown that the antihypertensive therapy really reduces ASCVD events and microvascular complications. So treating hypertension in a diabetic patients really helps to prevent the diabetic retinopathy. The aim is to keep the blood pressure around 130/80 millimeters of mercury. There are so many drugs again available. This is the latest guidelines which says if the starting BP is less than 160/100, you can start with a single drug. I don't know whether you are able to see the slide properly or not. If it is more than 160/100, you have to start with two drugs. One of them should be an ACE inhibitor. The fourth risk factor we have is dyslipidemia. There are many studies, these are few of them, which says there is the association between the dyslipidemia and the diabetic retinopathy. I want you people to see one particular study. This is Chennai Urban Rural Epidemiological Study, which evaluated the association of serum lipids with diabetic retinopathy in 1,736 patients with type 2 diabetes. The conclusion is diabetic retinopathy is associated with non-HDL cholesterol and serum triglycerides. And DME, that is diabetic macular edema, was associated with non-HDL-C cholesterol and LDL cholesterol. So if you treat again the dyslipidemia, there is a good chance of preventing the onset of diabetic retinopathy. So as far as diabetes is concerned, most of the patients should be getting a statin. Either they should be getting a moderate intensity statin or a high intensity statin therapy, most of the patients. This tells us about the medicines we can or molecules we can use in the high intensity statin and the moderate intensity statin therapy. Again, if you control the dyslipidemia, there are chances of preventing the onset of diabetic retinopathy. Okay, if you control all the risk factors, then there is a chance that the patient may not develop the diabetic retinopathy at all. But in spite of our best efforts, if the patient develops diabetic retinopathy or the patient comes to us in a later stage where they already have a diabetic retinopathy, so our role or our aim is to prevent the progression of the diabetic retinopathy. The screening is very important to see under which stage these diabetic patients are there and how to prevent their progressions. Okay. When to screen for diabetic retinopathy? In type 1 diabetes, within 5 years after the onset of diabetes, in patients with type 2 diabetes, at the time of diagnosis, you have to screen for diabetic retinopathy. If there is no evidence, you can screen on, every year. If there is a retinopathy progressing or sight threatening, then examination will be required more frequently. As Dr. Natarajan told, Professor Natarajan told, there are some programs that use retinal photography with remote reading of the photography, which can improve the access of screening for diabetic retinopathy. This is well accepted by the American Diabetic Association now. They have shown this, they have written this in the latest guidelines. Once a particular patient is diagnosed with diabetic retinopathy, that patient should be earmarked, and you should spend more time with that patient and tell them or educate them to keep their blood sugar, blood pressure, and lipids under control in order to prevent the vision loss. Because most of the patients are not aware that that diabetes can lead to a vision loss. That is very, very important. If you explain them properly, and they will be more careful in controlling their various parameters, which can really help to prevent the progression of the diabetic retinopathy. The third important factor for us, the third important aim or thing is for us is the prompt referral of the patients. The prompt referral of the patients really helps to prevent the visual loss. So when do you refer the patients? Okay, patients with mild NPDR, that is non-progressive proliferative diabetic retinopathy, and moderate non-proliferative diabetic retinopathy need not be referred immediately. Okay, but those patients with severe NPDR and patients with proliferative diabetic retinopathy has to be referred immediately to an ophthalmologist to prevent the vision loss. There are various treatment modalities are available to treat the diabetic retinopathy. The standard treatment is the pan-retinal laser photocoagulation. This is indicated in all the patients with proliferative diabetic retinopathy and in some cases with severe non-proliferative diabetic retinopathy. Of late, there is a intravitreal injection of antivascular endothelial growth factor. The studies have shown that this is not inferior to photocoagulation. Sometimes it is better than the photocoagulations. Two large trials. One is a diabetic retinopathy study in patients with proliferative diabetic retinopathy, and early treatment diabetic retinopathy study in patients with macular edema has provided strongest support for the therapeutic benefits of photocoagulation. Nowadays, a vast majority of the patients are treated with anti-VEGF therapy. There are some adjunctive therapies are available. Of course, you know, the lowering blood pressure has been shown to decrease retinopathy. AC inhibitors and ARBs are effective in the treatment of diabetic retinopathy. This is also new to me. This is fenofibrate. If you use in the very mild non-proliferative diabetic retinopathy at the baseline, it prevents the progression of the diabetic retinopathy. Fourth of our duty is to provide regular follow-up. So when to, how to do this regular follow-up? It depends upon the baseline stage of the retinopathy. It seems only 5% of the patients with mild non-proliferative diabetic retinopathy would progress to proliferative diabetic retinopathy in 1 year. So these patients can be screened once in 6 months to 12 months. But in mild to moderate NPDR, 27% of the patients would progress to PDR in 1 year. Proliferative diabetic retinopathy is a condition where the visual loss could take place at any place. That is an emergency condition. So you have to screen these patients every 4 to 8 months. If you look at the severe non-proliferative diabetic retinopathy, also known as the pre-proliferative stage, it would progress to PDR in a year. 50% of the patients will progress to PDR. So these patients should be screened every 2 to 3 months to prevent the vision loss. I have taken most of my material from this diabetes care standards of medical care in diabetes 2021. There are many wonders in the world. You all will be knowing and seeing this, most must have visited the numerous wonders of this world. But as far as mankind is concerned, there is only one wonder. That is vision. So let us protect this vision. Let us prevent the damage to this vision. Let us prevent the vision loss. Let us do whatever it is necessary to keep the vision intact. So what is the take-home message? Diabetic retinopathy is preventable. Regular screening is mandatory, and prompt referral and treatment will prevent the vision loss. This is our ultimate aim. No diabetic patient should lose their vision because of diabetic retinopathy. Thank you.